let's say we found a business that we think is interesting. Maybe we know the owner, or we've worked with a broker to find a business. We have run the numbers based on the data we've been given. So maybe it's just a T12, so trailing 12 months of financial data.
Yep.
And we write up a letter of intent or even a contract. We get the business under contract to buy. And now we have to start this process of actually verifying that everything the seller told us was true, and verifying all the things the seller didn't tell us for one reason or another. They forgot, they don't want us to know, whatever. And this is in the real estate world, this is the make or break. I mean, if you do good due diligence, then you're likely setting yourself up for success in the project. If you do bad due diligence, you're going to find surprises that are likely going to eat into your profit and maybe even cause you to lose money. So this is what you specialize in. Walk us through, let's say, yesterday I got a business under contract. What am I doing today? What are you going to help me or tell me to do today to start that due diligence process? What are the big pieces we should be thinking about?
Sure. So the first thing you need to understand in my mind is that due diligence is a painful process for a seller. And so you have to sort of prepare your mind and their mind for a process. So for instance, my understanding of real estate due diligence is that it's in the magnitude of weeks. For business acquisition due diligence, you're talking 3 to 6 months with the same rigor. And so typically when you write your letter of intent or contract to buy a business, you say, hey, I'm willing to buy your business at this price with this structure. But to do my due diligence, I need the 90-day right to have exclusivity to look at this business. You cannot solicit other offers. And even if you solicit other offers, I need the 90 days to look through your business to see if I want to buy it. And other people cannot buy it during that period. And so that's the first thing, is sort of recognize where you are. Then you need to sit down and go through a due diligence checklist. You can find them on the web. You can find them on my site, guardianduediligence.com, and go through the financial stuff that you need, the legal stuff that you need, the operational stuff that you need, the sort of ownership structure stuff that you need, and then like the industry data you need to feel comfortable having a picture of the business. And so after you provide this list to the seller, they're going to provide you some portion of it. And you guys are going to spend weeks going back and forth on, no, I need more specific here, it's more specific there. What I advise my clients to do is look at the list as sort of, here's the laundry list of things you need to understand. But Jay, you asked me where to go first. The first is the financial picture. Here's why. Sellers will always tell you that their business is great, it's on the upswing, it's a market leader, and all of their contracts are sort of long-term and will last 5 years. But if you get into there and you find out that their profits are not strong, they're declining, none of this work is contractual, or the contracts don't have any volume promises, so they're not actually enforceable in any way, you probably will stop your diligence process and look at a different deal. And so the financial stuff is what you need to understand first. I think once you understand that, in my mind, the legal, you need to make sure the person you're talking to actually has the right to sell the business. You need to make sure that there are contracts with customers, that they're not contracts that will block your acquisition, because sometimes those contracts will have change of control provisions. After you do financial, legal, then I think you're in the context of sort of operational, industry, and all the rest. And so if you go through in that sequential order, what it allows you to do is to stop. So if somebody says, hey, I have $1 million of cash flow. So people buy businesses traditionally as a multiple of cash flow. So they say they have $1 million of cash flow. You look at their financials, okay, but that's QuickBooks. You look at their taxes, okay, that's QuickBooks. Hey, send me your bank statements. Wait, I only see $700,000 of deposits here. How did you get to $1 million with only $700,000 of deposits? Help me understand this. At that point, you would have spent a week or two in diligence as opposed to 90 days, because at that point, if it's that much less, you probably aren't going to want to do the deal. So you look at financials first, then legal stuff, then operational things. You do it sequentially so you can stop. And you make sure that you have rigor, because here's what happens. You ask the seller for financials, and they send you like trailing 12, but you want to know at least a couple of years. Hey, I need 3 years. But you're the money. And so the deal doesn't happen until you're satisfied. So you have to push back. I need this. Hey, I need bank statements. Oh, I don't want to go talk to my banker. Or they'll print them out scan them so you can't convert them to Excel, and send you like 10 out of 12 months, right? And you have to be strong enough to say, this is not what I need. I need them direct PDF so I can actually convert them to Excel and do my analysis. So you have to push, just like in real estate, diligence is where the money's made. Diligence separates the novices from the experts, the folks that are getting maximum return versus those that are losing their money.
And the seller has an incentive, I don't want to say to lie, but the seller to tell a story. And can you explain why $1 to the seller? Like if they can get you to believe that the business has made $1 more than it has, why that dollar is more valuable to the seller than it is to the buyer?
Oh, for sure. And you said you had a phrase that you use. I use this one often. Because people buy a business as a multiple of cash flow, right? So for businesses that most people are going to be looking at, just call it 4 times cash flow is kind of generally it. If the seller convinces you that they had $1 more of cash flow, you're not going to pay $1 more for the business. You're going to pay $4 more for the business. So each story the seller tells, he gets a multiple benefit for it. And so that's why you really have to be good here, because this is probably the time in a seller's life or a person's life where they have one of the highest incentives to lie, right? Because it's not like my lie gets me $1 for $1 benefit. It gets the multiplier effect. And the reality is, as soon as the transaction occurs, there's no give backs. There's no mulligans. There's no oops. The requirement and the burden of due diligence is on the buyer. And so you have to be really good, because some stories sound reasonable but are very hard to check, Jay and Carol. So for instance, a lot of times you get people to say they're an absentee owner, right? They have an office in the business, but I'm never there. I play a lot of golf. I go fishing, my office manager runs that thing, don't even worry about it. Don't take me out of the expenses because I'm really not heavily in the business anymore. So that representation would take $100,000 that actually was an expense of the business. Let's say that they made $100,000 last year, and it'll take that from cost into cash flow. So now you're going to pay a 4x multiple on that story. Well, how do you check that, Jay? And so a lot of people will believe stories like that. Or, hey, I have a market leading product. I have very sticky customers. Well, how do you check that, right? And so getting good at realizing that there's a huge motivation for people to tell stories, and then a huge motivation for the work of getting the data necessary to understand the answer can be tough as well. That's where sort of you have this graveyard of people who have made bad acquisitions, right? And wish they had spent more time in diligence, wish they had dealt with people who, advisors or otherwise, that knew the industry better, or wish that they had spent, a couple more days testing things. So yeah, you get a multiplier on your story as a seller.
Yeah, and I think that may be the single most important point when it comes to buying a business that our listeners should keep in mind. If a seller can convince you that their business makes even a single dollar, for every single dollar they can convince you that their business makes more than it does, that's $4 more that you're paying for that business than it's worth. And so I think if our listeners do nothing more than keep that in mind, that their risk is 4 times as high as the seller's incentive to lie or misrepresent, I don't want to say lie, or tell a story, that's really going to save us a lot of money, because we're always going to go in with that attitude that the seller has a huge incentive to inflate that number, because it's going to get them 4 times, maybe more than 4 times, every dollar that they can convince us.
And Jay, I like your refocus on the 4 times. That's true also. The other reality in business acquisitions is that the seller is represented oftentimes by a business broker. And the business broker is motivated as well because they get a percentage of the purchase price of the deal size. And so if the broker or the seller can convince you of $1 more value, they're both incented to do so. And so the broker will say things that don't show up in the numbers that the seller will try to support as best he can to get the purchase price the broker advised him he could get in the market. And you as the buyer need to make sure you're not paying 4 times on a story.